Hey there, welcome back to the James Show. It's News Talk 820 WBAP, now on FM and 93.3. Hey, good to see you too. All right. Well, this is a day where I kind of get to shine because I love this economic stuff, and I hope you don't mind getting too much into the weeds and the sort of nerdy financial economics talk here. I know it's not real sexy. I know it's not real, like, emotionally heart-pulling, but this is the kind of stuff that it may not get as much interest in the headlines, but this affects you. This affects you more than the fight in Bedford or, God forbid, the stabbing in Frisco. As tragic as that is, and as much as that pulls at your heartstring as a parent, you know, I mean, those are some brutal stories that just kind of ruin your whole day. They're not going to affect your life like the tariffs. And the tariffs, if this is this could go one of two ways. Now that they're set, now that they've actually happened. One of the possibilities in the Choose Your Own Adventure book is already gone. The whole idea that, well, the tariffs are never going to be implemented because these countries are going to capitulate, or Trump's going to capitulate, or they'll come to the middle and make some sort of compromise in a new regime. But we're past that now. So now we are in the position of, look, tariffs are restrictions on free trade. Tariffs do put up roadblocks and hurdles to international trade. Will it be a net positive or a net negative for America? Well, in the immediate short term, if you look at your 401k today, didn't do too well, did it? However, that's not how you measure these things. You know, you don't measure the Dallas Cowboys based on the first game of the season. You also have a similar metaphor to sports where you sort of have a rebuilding year. Like, if there is going to be a recession, is there a recession because a bunch of government workers lost their jobs? And in this process, as they transition from being people who suck away resources from the private sector, they will be people who contribute resources to the private sector. So after this mini recession, if we even have one, it might just be 1 quarter of negative GDP growth, if any. If we're stronger on the other end of this than we otherwise would have been, it's a net positive. So it's impossible. Anybody who tells you already that these are a success or a failure, they're probably partisan hacks. No one knows yet. We all have our theories, and you better couch it as a theory. Like, I think, I expect, I think perhaps, or maybe. Put a bunch of qualifiers in there when you talk about this, because you don't, and I'm not saying you, I'm talking more to the people on TV and on other radio stations. You don't know, but let's go ahead and go ahead and set the narrative in a more honest way than it's being presented on the TV. So we went to Donald Trump's announcement yesterday live on the James Show when he came out on the White House lawn and was talking about Liberation Day. Well, let me pull a little chunk of that, because I think overall this is the right idea. This is the right thing to do. I don't know if I would do it exactly the same. I don't even know all the nuances and ins and outs of what he's doing. I do know that if his end goal is a more free and fair trade system, then I'm all for it. If he wants other countries to get their tariffs down as low as possible in exchange for us getting our tariffs back down as low as possible, that's kind of the ideal scenario. But that's not one of the scenarios we have right now. No one's offering to take away their protectionist tariffs or their special treatment. They're getting some privileges right now. And so if that's the philosophical goal that he's aiming for and sticks to, and that's not just something he's saying in the wind, then I think this is a brilliant move. We're all going to be happier for it in a year from now. But there's also some little nuance in here that I do have issues with. Let me pull one little clip here from yesterday. And this is something I hear from both Team Red and Team Blue. So this isn't really a political issue. This is an economics issue. Let's talk about NAFTA and free trade. Did NAFTA help or hurt more?
But since the very beginning of NAFTA, our country lost 90,000 factories. Think of what that is, 90,000. Think about putting a map up and putting tax on it. You wouldn't have enough room. 90,000. I said, is that possible? We had it checked 4 different times, and it was actually somewhat higher than that. And 5 million manufacturing jobs were lost while racking up trade deficits of $19 trillion. That was the worst trade deal ever made. As a result of these gigantic losses, foreign nations now own $26 trillion more of American assets than the Americans own of their own foreign assets or other foreign assets. The United States can no longer produce enough antibiotics to treat our sick. We have a tremendous problem. We have to go to foreign countries to treat our sick. If anything ever happened from a war standpoint, we wouldn't be able to do it. We import virtually all of our computers, phones, televisions, and electronics. We used to dominate the field, and now we import it all from different countries.
Okay, so he's not wrong in the fact that we did lose a lot of manufacturing. We did lose a lot of that base, the factories, they went overseas to other countries. But I'm not so sure we're worse off because of it. I want to give you one of the great examples here because government didn't touch this. They kind of messed up the education system and the healthcare system and pharmaceuticals and things like that. But I want you to go back and just remember the TV you had when you were a kid. It absolutely sucked, didn't it? Wasn't it the worst? If you don't remember or if you're too young, this is an ad for a Zenith TV in 1983. And it's a pop-up, 45-inch pop-up. Yes, it's a cabinet, and you hit a button, and then it zooms up because it's so wide and it takes up so much room that it would dominate the living room without being a cabinet. But listen to this. Listen to this terrible TV they're bragging about.
I want a giant screen TV.
But I didn't want a giant screen taking over my living room.
Look what Zenith built.
By remote control, the screen rises from the fine furniture cabinet. Zenith presents Space Screen 45, more than 3 times the area of a 25-inch screen,
45?
yet the picture is sharper than ever before in home projection TV. And only Zenith has the screen that disappears.
So I get my living room back.
New Space Screen 45. Only Zenith has it.
Okay, so yeah, that's terrible TV, terrible picture. It's only 45 inches. It was $3,000 back then in 1983. That would be $9,000 in today's money. Are you better off next time you go get a TV? Can you go get a 60-inch TV for like $212 and it weighs like 10 pounds and doesn't take up your entire living room? In fact, you can hang it like a painting on your wall. So, you know, not all foreign trade has been bad. The key is balance. And I want to know what you think. Are we going to find that balance or is this one big mistake? 800-288-9227. 800-288-9227. We are now in post-Liberation Day America. Trump's reciprocal tariffs take effect. How do you think it'll work? We'll ask my next guest as well. Raven Harrison's coming up on The James Show. I'm James Parker. It's News Talk 820 WBAP, now on FM at 93.3. Welcome to the James Show, News Talk 820 WBAP, now on FM at 93.3. If you have any comments, economically speaking, on post-Liberation Day America, 800-288-9227. I bet you my next guest has some strong opinions about it. Raven Harrison's back on. Hey, Raven, welcome back to the show.
Hey, James. Good to be here.
So it's post-Liberation Day. Am I supposed to be scared that the economy is about to collapse and it's going to be Sodom and Gomorrah and cats and dogs living together? Because the TV seems to be really concerned about this.
Well, this is what they're always concerned about, because saying everything's going to be okay doesn't help your ratings go up, and it doesn't help you sell papers back in the day. Only saying that it's going to be an imminent catastrophe that you have to send a lot of money to is the only thing that'll fix it.
Well, it doesn't work anymore. Like, aren't you the people who told me the Inflation Reduction Act would reduce inflation? Or even if you go back in the Obama stimulus plan, we were told we have to pass this so inflation doesn't get, unemployment doesn't get up to 10%, and it got past 10% after we passed it. I mean, they're wrong about all these other economic predictions. Why does anyone listen to them now?
Well, that's where I need to stop you. They're not wrong about everything, James. They're lying. There's a difference. So they're not wrong. They're lying. And that's what we have to remember. And that's all you're seeing right now across the board is the Democrats losing their mind because they're getting caught in the same stuff that was fine when Biden was doing it. And that's what we're looking at. But yes, this is just a typical word salad is we got to get billionaires out. And then we say, okay, well, what about Soros and Gates? Okay, and Reid Hoffman. Oh, well, but that's different. P.S. We hate Trump.
Well, all these other billionaires, Zuckerberg, Bezos, and Elon Musk, when they were on Team Blue, got zero complaints from these people. And just so for new people who don't keep up with this as much as myself and Raven, this is what she was talking about when Biden did tariffs and his Treasury Secretary went to the media. She was saying, "Oh, this will be great. There's nothing wrong with high tariffs."
As you have seen, there have been some experts, some groups, the National Retail Federation among them, who've expressed concerns that it will be U.S. consumers who eventually end up paying for these tariffs. As you know, polling shows that rising prices are voters' biggest concern right now. So I'd ask you to speak directly to them. Will American consumers bear the cost of these tariffs?
I don't believe that American consumers will see any meaningful increase in the prices that they face.
Okay, but now what happens with tariffs? Oh, it's the battle scene for Braveheart out there, Raven. I don't buy it.
No, they don't either. I mean, and that's what this is. This is basically them trying to justify for 4 years they let Biden run shot, over our economy, over our finances, over our border, and they were crickets and silence. And now that we're finding out corruption, they are absolutely losing it. As far as the tariffs, they had no problem. Do you know we have as high as 270% tariff from things coming from Canada? So they're not outraged about that. But when we say, hey, we're going to reciprocate and start balancing the trade, then all of a sudden Trump's a bully. So this is the usual cast of characters and the usual obstructionists who, once again, are just enjoying the fact that we haven't worked really hard to get them out.
Well, we know that tariffs have been used as protectionist tools for selected connected industries, and it's a favor that lobbyists can buy and politicians can sell. So they don't really want to get rid of selective tariffs like that. They don't want a free and fair trade across the board because that they lose something to sell to lobbyists. And then at the same time, they are picking and choosing winners and losers here in Texas because they're considering $2.5 billion to subsidize Hollywood in Texas. And is playing favorites good or not?
Well, it's not. But see, this is again, when people want to know why things aren't happening in their government, why things aren't moving forward, this is why, because this is the word salad, deception shell game that politicians like to play in front of the cameras, and behind the scenes they're making deals like this. But I think the bigger thing in Texas is you guys got to fix. You got 400 acres allocated for Sharia City in the middle of Texas. Who gets permits for this and funding and zoning and all these things? And we get a letter every now and then from Abbott saying, yeah, it's likely not going to happen. What do you mean it's likely not going to happen? How did this even get started? This is what we have to start telling our people is you've got to stay on these politicians because this is what happens.
Yeah, of all the places, Collin County. Let's not let that fly. All right, here's another touchy subject I'm going to bring up with you, Raven. There's two congresswomen that are asking for remote voting privileges because they just had a baby and they've got to take care of their baby and they've got to breastfeed and it's too inconvenient. And I'm kind of split internally on this. I'm sympathetic to moms and I want to encourage the family and family unit and whatnot. But no one else gets to vote remotely or should be voting remotely. No one should be voting remotely, period. In fact, we had mothers through the entirety of the American experience without remote voting for maternity leave. So why now? And then on top of that, do you want to be treated equal or do you want special privileges? So, this is a tough one. Where do you stand?
Well, I don't think it really is that tough. And I appreciate the question, James, because I am a mother who had to juggle. And I think it's absolutely absurd. It was only when I was blasting this that I found that they have subsidized health care and daycare for congresswomen. I didn't know that they actually, there's a daycare a few blocks from the Capitol that is completely free to millionaires. So this is absolutely absurd. If you want to be treated equally, I mean, I personally like the special treatment of being a woman, but let's play the game. But if you want to be equal, you've got to show up and do your job. And let's just mention that, one congresswoman who said this, her daughter or her child is almost 3. And the one who did this I believe, is at 3 or 4 months old. Regular moms who don't have access to this kind of daycare have been forced to figure this out and juggle. But as it relates to Congress, when you don't even work you work 134 days a year, show up and vote. Either that or resign your seat, stay home with your baby. And I'm speaking as a mother. I took my time to be home when I needed to be home. And now I am thankfully out of childbearing years and I'm ready to do the job. But I disagree with women who like to use that as a crutch, and they've opened the door for because men can use this too. So now they have opened the door and they delayed what people really wanted, which was the SAVE Act and reining in these judges. So absolutely disgusted by what happened. And her using her baby as a prop was sickening. There are mothers out there with 4 kids, single, who are making it work, who don't get any kind of break to show up from work. Show up to work. Do your job.
Amen. Wow. Raven Harrison blowing it out of the water. Where do they find you online, Raven?
They can find me at Raven Harrison, FORcongress.com. Get out and donate. Patriots, help me stop this crap.
Look her up on YouTube, too. She's got a lot of great videos there. And every once in a while, I get an email based on your appearance. You don't have to tell me that, guys. I already know what she looks like. Thank you. That's Raven Harrison, ravenharrison.com. But now I'm asking you the same question I was just asking Raven. These two congresswomen, this isn't a political thing. One of them is a Republican. One of them is a Democrat. They want proxy voting. They want to do remote voting because they just had a baby, because they're mothers, and they would like maternity leave for congresswomen. Now, do you think that's only fair? Or do you think that's special treatment? Do you think they should get an exception? Or do you think they should be treated just like the men who don't get these little exceptions? Or do you think men should get the exception too? For, I don't know, in the rare case they have to breastfeed, I guess. 800-288-9227. 800-288-9227. I'm James Parker. It's News Talk 820 WBAP, now on FM at 93.3. Hey there, welcome to the James Show, News Talk 820 WBAP, now on FM at 93.3. We have a unique situation here in Congress where we have one member of the congressional delegation that's a Republican who's also a new mom, and a member of the Democrat delegation that's also a new mom, and they have both teamed together, and they're asking for remote voting. Now, I say they're asking for remote voting. They're asking to continue the remote voting, which wasn't a part of American history all the way up until COVID, which was the poorest, lamest excuse to relax the rules that are just very clearly set in stone for obvious common sense reasons. But they want to extend that. You know, hey, well, we've proven that we can tolerate proxy voting, so why can't I do this? And all new moms should have this privilege. Well, if you think I'm just, pulling this out of the air, let me let you hear the. This is the Democrat representative, Brittany Peterson. And this is her making her case that Congress should have proxy votes for maternity leave.
Mr. Speaker, I rise today in strong opposition to this rule, which restricts moms and dads from doing their jobs after welcoming a new child. Like so many of our colleagues, it's one of my greatest honors to be a mom. I have 2 little boys, a son named Davis, who's 5, and my little guy here, Sam, who's now 9 weeks old. It's also one of my greatest honors to have been elected by my constituents to represent them in Congress. And I can tell you, after being a mom here and being only the 13th member to have ever given birth while serving in Congress,
That's a lot.
member, I can tell you we have a long ways to go to make this
Hang on.
place.
Being only the 13th member that's had a baby while serving in Congress. So yeah, that's a few. That's a baker's dozen now. None of the other ones needed proxy voting before it, but you all of a sudden it's a human right now. Anyway, I'm just
accessible for young families like mine. When I was pregnant, I couldn't fly towards the end of my due date because it was unsafe for Sam.
Maybe you should have dropped out of the race. Maybe you shouldn't have run for Congress if it's going to be a deal breaker. But how'd the other 12 people do it before you? And people, the comments under this are saying, well, it should be for men and women. Men should have maternity leave so they can help the wife take care of the kids when the kid's a baby. Bro, we've been around for almost 250 years now. We've been having babies that entire time. No one thought we needed paternity leave. What are you, a public school teacher now? Do your job. Taking off every second you can get. Janet and Rockwall, what do you think about maternity leave for Congress?
I don't want an elected president to take maternity leave. I voted for them to be president. I expect them to be there unless they're deathly ill. So if that part of the executive branch I don't want taking maternity leave, then the other 2 executive branches I don't want taking maternity leave. They're government. They knew what they signed up for. So do your job.
You know what? I haven't heard anyone else make that comparison. We wouldn't tolerate that for President of the United States. Oh, I'm sorry. I'm going to have to be indisposed every 4 hours so I can feed. It does fit in with one of the general tenors of criticism here is that, well, if you're unable to do your job, if you're unable to do your duties, then you should probably resign.
Exactly.
Well, I love it, Janet. And somehow it means more coming from a woman than a man. It shouldn't, but it does. Daniel and Hurst, you're on WBAP. What do you think about maternity leave for Congress?
Well, the more I think about it, the more things I think of. But if I remember, it's been a while since we've had small children, but my wife used to pump. I guess they still do that.
Yeah. Well, I just had 4 kids, and my
daycare could take care of feeding them at any time.
Yeah. Look, she doesn't have to breastfeed on the floor of Congress. They do have pumping. They do have a system by which you could still accomplish that. Is it convenient? No. Is it ideal? No. But you're going to have to make the choice. Do you want to have a baby, or do you want to be a congresswoman? And if you're going to be a congresswoman and have a baby, that's on you to deal with the inconveniences that come along with it, right?
Well, yeah. The rules. She knew the rules going in. That's kind of the way I look at it.
Well, who's in favor of this then? Do we have it? Thank you very much, Daniel. Anyone in favor of maternity leave for congresswomen? Let me try Hayden. Hayden in Arlington, do you agree or disagree about maternity leave for Congress?
Totally disagree, man. I'm like, either somebody should fill their seat during their time that they're on leave, or just entirely give up your seat. Because, 134 days a year, it's not a lot for you to go to work. And, if I'm able to do it, I've got 4. You know, if I've been able to do it this whole time, if my wife can do it, if one of us can be home, it's not like there's not 2 parents. So there's a way around it.
So you mean like if she's not going to be there, like I remember who was that? Some president, I think it was George W. Bush. The first time I figured out that there was like the swap, like the tag team method for the Oval Office, George W. Bush had to have a colonoscopy, and in order to do that, he's going to like have a polyp removed. So they had to put him under anesthesia. And so since he was going to be incapacitated, like not just asleep, but unable to be woken up, they actually had to swear in Dick Cheney for like 19 hours or something until George W. Bush was recovered. And so, you know, maybe they could get a tag team, but
exactly, yeah.
Okay, that's not too bad. We could have like the alternate or the understudy for Brittany Peterson. So we have to have understudy congressman now.
Yeah, tag in the B team. You know,
maybe the person could be appointed by the governor of the state or something. But look, that's not a hard yes or a hard no. I like the fact that you're trying to come up with the workaround there, Hayden. Good job.
I'm working on it. Sorry.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, sir.
All right, get back to work now, Hayden. I hear you trying to do your job in the background. What do you think? 800-288-9227. 800-288-9227. 2 moms in Congress are asking for remote voting so they can have some semblance of maternity leave. One's a Republican, one's a Democrat. So this doesn't feel especially political. I'm just asking you, should new moms in Congress be allowed to vote remotely or, in Hayden's case, by proxy? 800-288-9227. 800-288-9227. I'm James Parker. It's News Talk 820 WBAP, now on FM at 93.3. Hey there, welcome to the James Show, News Talk 820 WBAP, now on FM at 93.3. We have two moms in Congress asking for remote voting as a form of maternity leave. They have young children, and they would like to be able to vote remotely, but proxy voting was something that was just a temporary thing that, in my opinion, should have never happened for 1 second, but it was instituted during COVID. So, we went the first, what would that be, 243 years of our existence without remote voting, and now all of a sudden it's a human right. And they're asking, just for fair treatment, but I don't think that's fair treatment. All the guys have to vote in person. Everyone who doesn't have a kid, if you're a woman who doesn't have a kid, you have to vote in person. So you're asking for special privileges for when you have a kid. Now, that's fine. Go ahead and admit it, but you're not asking for equal treatment. You're not asking for equality. So the question is, should new moms be given special privileges if they're in Congress to vote by proxy? 800-288-9227. Let's go to Ellen in Cedar Hill. You're on WBAP. What do you think, Ellen?
I think it's ridiculous that she's not being allowed to vote remotely. Why you can't put them on a Zoom call? It's, you're saying 243 years. Well, there used to be no men in Congress.
You mean no women?
How is this? Sorry, apologize. No women.
That's all right.
It's discrimination. I mean, when you can't tell them to time their babies around when Congress isn't in session. That's ludicrous.
No, but you can't tell them to time their congressional elections around not having babies. If she knew she was going to have a baby, this is a 9-week-old baby. She knew she was pregnant. She didn't step down. She continued to run, and she ran telling her constituents that she was going to go to Washington and do the job that they voted for. And now it sounds like she's trying to change the rules.
No, I disagree. She's not. And you said there's another one. There's 2 of them that are pregnant. What is the other woman say?
Well, they're not pregnant. They've already had their kids. But one of them's Anna Paulina Luna from Florida, who's not just a Republican. She's a staunch MAGA, just spraying red all over the place Republican.
Yeah, I know who she is. Yeah.
Yeah, and then Brittany Peterson is the Democrat who has the 9-week-old baby, who sounded kind of cute on the floor of the House. But you at least admit, though, that they're not asking for equal treatment. They're asking for special privileges. Do you concede that?
Well, yeah, men. I don't consider it a special privilege.
Why not?
Men can't have babies.
Right,
Men
which is why we don't get the special privilege, which is why all men will have to vote in person at all times. But the whole point that people oppose proxy voting and want people to vote in person, it goes back through time immemorial. First thing, if you want to get business done in any of these business settings, whether it's Congress or your church budget session, you have to have a quorum. You have to have a set number of people who are present in the room to do it. And we're seeing them deal with that in Austin right now. Well, how do you have a quorum if no one's allowed to forced to show up? Or how do you know
they can't be on like a Zoom call so your face is there, that it's them? I mean, it's not forever, it's for a set period of time.
So if I go to Congress, can I vote through Zoom calls?
I understand your point.
Yeah, I know. And here's the fun part. Not one of us is right and not one of us is wrong. This is a subjective call, Ellen. So I'm just glad you called in when you disagree, because I feel like people don't want to call in when they disagree because they're kind of embarrassed. Don't. I'll be nice.
Well, I was getting annoyed that everyone that was calling in was saying they didn't want them to have special privileges.
I feel that. I get annoyed when everyone agrees too.
Yep.
All right. Well, good stuff. You made your case well, Ellen. Thank you.
My opinion as a mother and a grandmother.
Well,
I think they should be allowed, but we'll see.
Gotcha. Thanks for listening, Ellen. Angel in Dallas, you're on WBAP. What do you think?
Well, I'm a liberal and a mother, and I agree with you.
It happens sometimes. You don't have to wash your eyes out with soap or anything. It happens.
I don't understand 2 things about what they're saying. Now, number one, they are including men in case the men need to help their wives who just had babies.
God, that's even dumber, though.
Or something.
Yeah, okay.
So but the thing I don't understand is twofold. The first thing I don't understand is they know ahead of time when votes are going to be happening. So they should be able to make allowances for someone to watch the child while they're doing what they're doing. The other thing I don't understand is if they're allowed to do it, why do they keep saying that they can't afford for regular people to be able to do the same thing or to have maternity leave as they do? I don't get that.
Oh, okay. I get the juxtaposition there, comparing them to the working class and not to other congressmen. Well,
Exactly.
I mean, that's kind of a legit complaint, but that's definitely coming from a Team Blue point of view. I think that's a good excuse on why no one should have guaranteed maternity leave. If your employer wants to be generous enough to do that, of course he should do it. It'd probably be good for morale and good for recruiting and good for employee retention, but it shouldn't be mandated by law or regulation. I lost you on that one, didn't I?
Disagree with,
Yeah.
I'll disagree with you on that one, but I think it should be across the board in all sectors. I don't think that Congress people should be put on a higher pedestal and be allowed things that the rest of us don't get.
All right, you're a female liberal woman. I mean, mom, but you're listening to my show. Do you listen on a regular basis, or did you just accidentally bump into me today?
I know you.
Oh, that's fantastic. Okay, so
You and I know each other. I have a different name. I changed my name after my last divorce. This is the Go-To Negro, Leslie.
oh, this is okay. Well, I was just wondering how many, because the statistics are really small, and she's actually black. So black female mom. Liberal. They're out there. I tell you, sometimes when I couch these things I know not everyone agrees with me. That's why some people out there listen and you wouldn't suspect it. Who's next? Jody? Jody in Fort Worth, what do you think about congressional maternity leave?
It should not be allowed. I've had 4 babies. I've voted. I've done my jobs. If you choose to be a congressperson, a senator, any office, and you choose to have a baby, you make it work out. I would be honored to be pregnant and to be a congressman. Period.
Agreed. Some jobs will work with you. Some jobs you just can't work with. Who was that? Like that was the first big WNBA star back in the day, wasn't it? Like Cheryl Swoops, who she wasn't she from Texas Tech? It's fuzzy because I'm not really up on my WNBA legacy history here. But if I remember correctly, she was like the first pick in the draft, and she was going to be she was like Caitlin Clark was, but 20-something years ago. And she ended up getting pregnant before the season started and couldn't play or something, and it totally interrupted her career. And yeah, that never happened in the NBA. It's the damnedest thing. Who would have thought? All right. Thank you very much, everyone, for chiming in. Coming up next, we're going to talk to Spencer McGowan, Net Worth Radio. This tariff talk has the markets a little rattled today. A lot of red on Wall Street. Is this affecting your money? Find out next. I'm James Parker. It's News Talk 820 WBAP, now on FM at 93.3. Hey there, welcome back to the James Show. It's News Talk 820 WBAP, now on FM at 93.3. Top story of the day, Trump tariffs, they went into effect. And we're already seeing some reactions to it. You know, some people are announcing the halting of production. You just heard in the news report there. There's been some temporary layoffs already. Stock market was a bit of a bloodbath today, and I don't mean that in the genocidal sense. I mean that in the parlance of the financial world. But really, we're not worried about the issues with wholesale egg farmers or some production plant in Canada. Here's what you want to know. How's this going to affect me? Well, let's ask Spencer McGowan from Net Worth Radio. Spencer McGowan, to the people listening, how is this going to affect them? Well, we do have like the S&P 500 is now back into correction. Tory Nasdaq's been there. Dow kind of next to the S&P 500. We've seen this be a bouncing point though, where it got 10% down, and that seemed to be when it got a mind of its own self and turned back around. How much further do you think this one can go? Yeah, I hear you on that one. So, how many countries have capitulated already? Because I really think that if a bunch of countries decide, well, we're not even going to fight this anymore, we're just going to go ahead and give the man what he wants, that this could all be resolved within a month, maybe 3 months. We won't even think about this anymore. There you go. I bought the last dip that happened about a month or so ago when it drove down and bounced off of correction territory. And I went shopping. I missed out getting on NVIDIA years ago, so I got a good deal on it about a month ago or so. I think the smart people are going to be shopping here in a few days. Harvesting, selling off your profits and losses there. Yeah. Well, there's a lot of discounts out there. Like Nvidia is down almost 8% just in one day. So if you're wanting to get on that train, or like Airbnb was down 7% today, and all these companies that you've wanted to get in on, this may be your chance. What are y'all talking about on Net Worth Radio this weekend? All right. Well, that's all good stuff. Spencer McGowan, Net Worth Radio. I appreciate your time. You can find him on the weekends here on WBAP. What time do you come on? Or if you need a financial advisor, he's over at the Crescent, which is kind of walking distance from where I'm at right now. I might just stop by and hit you up for a free lunch sometime there, Spencer. That'd be cool. I've never actually been in that building. I just driven past it 100,000 times. Thank you very much, Spencer. Coming up next, my next guest is Anthony Russo, and we're going to talk about the political fallout from the tariffs, because I know this isn't fun to think about. We're only on day 2 of, post-Liberation Day. But if it does tank the economy, what does that mean for the midterms? Because primaries are about to start for the midterms here in just a few months. 800-288-9227. We'll find out from my next guest. I'm James Parker. It's News Talk 820 WBAP, now on FM at 93.3. Hey, basketball fans, have you downloaded the Prize Picks app and added to the fun that you're already having? Listen, I know the playoffs are about to start, and for every step of the way, you can continue with the Prize Picks app, because I know what the old fantasy sports leagues look like. As soon as the regular season's over, the fun stops. That's not so with Prize Picks. James Parker here. It's America's #1 daily fantasy sports app. So that daily is the adjective that's the key there. It only lasts one day. It doesn't have to last all weekend or all week or all season. You could just, for like today, Luka Doncic. I know I don't mean to pull at your heartstrings here, but he has a game tonight at 9. 7.5 assists. Will he get more or less than that? Oh, that seems pretty easy. What about Steph Curry? 26 points. Will he get more or less than that? Boom, you already have a lineup, because it's just 2 to 6 players where you pick more or less on a statistic line. And you can turn your money into up to 1,000 times your cash with Prize Picks, America's #1 daily fantasy sports app. Over 10 million active users, including me. So you can come on and try it with my money, too. Download the Prize Picks app. Use promo code WBAP. Get $50 with your first $5 play. That's right. We're giving you $50 to play with your first $5 game. All you have to do is download Prize Picks. Use promo code WBAP. Prize Picks. Run your game. Hey there, welcome to the James Show. News Talk 820 WBAP, now on FM at 93.3. So the tariffs are the number one story today. Markets are a quick number two. But look, we've already talked about how this could affect your money. We've also talked about how this is affecting the market overall. Let's talk about something that, kind of seems unseemly right now, but is a very important question. How does this affect the world politically? Anthony Russo is my next guest from the Truth Will Set You Free podcast. And I think the concern here, Anthony, is that if this does take the economy, if this doesn't resolve, we don't see a bunch of companies capitulate or at least negotiate new deals, and we go into the midterms in recession conditions, that is not going to be good for Team Trump.
No, absolutely. And I said this before the election, and I still continue to say it. We were going to be in for a rough patch financially, depending on how things were treated from a media perspective, how much hate was still visible in the nation, how much political strife. I didn't quite know that tariffs were going to be the number one thing that was going to be driving the economy, but I knew something would. I knew that the first 6 months were going to be a little bit bumpy, and I think that right now, the question, like you said, is it 6 months of pain or is it 18 months of pain? And if we're going through this still as we lead into the midterms, I think we're going to see, again, another very, very quick political shift because it's going to be very easy to blame the economy issues on the Trump administration.
Yeah, and I don't think there's really an upside for the Trump administration because if everything goes well and other countries capitulate and we start getting more fair trade deals, if not pure fair trade or reciprocal tariffs, something closer to it, it's not like he's ever going to get the credit. It's not like MSNBC is going to come on and say, oops, we were wrong about all of that economic scaremongering. Sorry about that.
You know, what's wild is they played a clip from Oprah Winfrey in 1988 when Trump was on there, and he literally was outlining the issue with our tariff policy in the United States and all the issues leading into our debt and how it's just going to keep getting worse and worse and worse. And here we are. I think he saw the risk. This is the thing. I think he's making the right move. I have friends that are on my side that don't agree with tariffs, and I can understand why. I think that this is a little bit of a gamble, but the gamble is necessary in order to save the United States of America's economy for a generation or two to come. I think that that's how big of an effect this will have. So he knew he was going to do this. He couldn't do it during the first term because there is the risk of an issue with reelection because it could go bad for an extended period of time. I think the long-term gain is always going to supersede the short-term pain. The question is the short-term pain 1 year, 6 months, 3 years, 4 years? That's the big issue with all this.
Yeah, and he did do a lot with tariffs in that in Trump 1.0, and it all seemed to work itself out pretty fine, but not everybody. And so I kind of like the idea that, he doesn't have to worry about reelection now. He doesn't have to worry about another term because that's not happening. Really, all he has to worry about is this midterm thing that's going to happen in about a year and a half. And if we get it resolved before then, no one's going to think about tariffs in November of 2026.
True. And I was a little bit of a conspiracy theorist. I know it's shocking. During the first presidency, when he did the tariffs on China, and again, this is reciprocal tariffs. I do want to say people should go look up how much we're tariffed from other countries. It's mind-boggling that we're even going, wow, this is rude of us to do. And it's double most places, if not triple. But in the first presidency, I do believe, I kept saying, man, it's crazy that we put a tariff on China that was unprecedented. And here we are with COVID, which destroyed the world economy for a period of time. So I almost had the belief without confirmation that something with our tariffs to China and essentially puffing our muscles that way might have been part of the reason that we had the demise that we call COVID.
Ooh,
it's a stretch. It's a stretch.
Yeah,
but I could see it.
It's hard to argue because in hindsight, criticism is just so easy. So let's talk about the political fallout that already happened this week with the special elections. Anything Team Red needs to be especially worried about, or lessons they could learn from? Because it was kind of a split decision from the elections that happened in Florida and Wisconsin.
Yeah, the Wisconsin one was definitely something to watch. And you look at, you got Elon Musk and you got George Soros, two heavyweights that were essentially competing with their money for Wisconsin. And especially in a state that ended up being red, it was very surprising to me to see what happened with some of those special elections, and it shows that right now it is about messaging and money instead of just money, because I think that Elon Musk could have blown him out of the water and it just didn't work out, and Soros somehow won that.
All right, talk about what you got going on these days. Are you still doing Truth Will Set You Free, or have you moved on?
Well, I'm still doing the one outs here and there on Instagram. I still do rants when I feel the need to do it. I actually interviewed the guy from the California wildfires, the one that had the leaked audio to Karen Bass. I did that a couple weeks ago. For the most part, though, just trying to spread some positivity, because the world is garbage at this point. So doing the best I can with positivity type videos.
I think the world's fantastic. What are you talking about? Anthony Russo, thank you very much, sir. Appreciate it. Everything's going fine. Everything's fine. Sometimes Teslas catch fire. Other than that, things are fine. Blue Ribbon Roofing's 2025 WeatherCon is coming up at the end of the month. That's Saturday, April 26th. You're going to come out to the Frontiers of Flight Museum. You're going to get free admission to the museum, which is worth the price to begin with. Get it? Free? Worth the price? It's a dad joke. Stop it. But it's on from 9:30 a.m. until 1:30 p.m. You can come out there. I'll be there. I know you don't want to meet me. You do want to meet Hal J. He'll be there. Brad Barton, he'll be there. The weatherman from Channel 4, I believe, is going to be there. So come on out and say hi. Here's the tip, though. When you get there, if you get there at 9:30, there's going to be a big line. So if you want to be like first in line, you might want to get there around 9. If you don't care about being a little late, then show up at 10 or 10:30, but not too late, because there's all kinds of presentations. Like there's the Mr. Brainiac guy for the kids that shows the kids science demonstrations. There's some science demonstrations for adults where some people from the National Weather Service and Storm Chasers show some video of stuff that they've tracked down for adults in the little theater that's at the museum. So it's a whole thing. If you're into weather, if you're into science, if you're looking for something to do with kids, especially younger kiddos, that's sort of science related, educational related, not just something dumb, this is perfect. It's for the weather enthusiast and the family. Blue Ribbon Roofing's 2025 WeatherCon, Saturday, April 26th at the Frontiers of Flight Museum next to Love Field, 9:30 a.m. until 1:30 p.m. Coming up next, should we be using $2.5 billion of your taxpayer money to subsidize Hollywood here in Texas? I'm James Parker. It's News Talk 820 WBAP, now on FM at 93.3. Hey there, welcome to the James Show. News Talk 820 WBAP, now on FM at 93.3. Here's a good question for you. Should your taxpayer dollars be used to subsidize Hollywood? Because it seems like the Democrats and Republicans are both on board. Or, I don't mean all of them, but on average, I think both Team Red and Team Blue in Austin are in favor of this somehow. Very convincing, very persuasive guys were helping push this through. Matthew McConaughey and Woody Harrelson, two Texas boys who, I don't know. Are we all fans of them? I'm definitely fans of Matthew McConaughey and Woody Harrelson. I love both of those dudes. All right. You know, I could do the Wooderson impressions if you want. But let me give you a little taste of him talking, when I say him, of Matthew McConaughey in front of your Texas legislature, making the case for $2.5 billion of your taxpayer dollars going to filmmakers.
With 12 weeks still scheduled to shoot. Now, most of you know me or know of me. I was born in Uvalde. I was raised in Longview. I went to college up the street at University of Texas. Made my first film here. Then I went off to Hollywood with $2,000 in a U-Haul and made a career of making movies. And I still reside here with my family in Texas. Now, one of the only regrets of my 33-year career in film and television is not making more of my films here in Texas, especially the ones that were about Texans or set in Texas. Now, it's my understanding that the rub against a film incentive in Texas is more philosophical than economical.
No,
you don't want to help a movie get made in Texas that throws rocks at Texas or Texans.
No, that's not it.
Me neither. Somebody wants to do that, let them go shoot in some other incentivized state like Georgia, Tennessee, Louisiana, or go to Malta and do it. But not here. I'm with you. So let's talk about the opportunity that we have with this bill.
All right, so let's talk about, obviously, that's a negative impact on the people who want to try and get you to pay for their business, is to kind of gloss over the fact that they're going to make a bunch of movies that make you look dumb, make you look bad, make people dislike or distrust you. It's going to slander your culture, your heritage, your religion, your country, your history. I mean, that's part of it, and that makes it ugly. But even if they were all pro James Parker movies, if they were all movies that were pro Texas, economically speaking, it's still dumb. And I don't have to just throw pejoratives at it and insult it. They have done this in other states over the course of decades. We have many experiments where we can choose from. And Matthew McConaughey or Woody Harrelson or whoever else is for this doesn't go back and tell you how it worked out in these other states. One of the big ones was in New York. Now, most of the films that were subsidized there were for New York City. New York City! Didn't really help the rest of the state that much. But after they've had it for over a decade, they had a private firm, PFM, whoever that is, come audit their Hollywood subsidies, their filmmaking tax credits. And they said that it does not provide a positive return to the state in terms of direct state taxes. For revenue, for every $1 in tax money that they gave to the film industry, they could connect it to 15 cents in direct tax revenue. Now, if you wanted to go ahead and say, well, what about indirect stuff? And by indirect stuff, I don't mean like someone bought a movie prop or paid an actor. Like, what if they bought pizza for the people that were working on the set and the taxes that were paid on that pizza? Well, that's really stretching it, because those people that are there, they were going to eat lunch anyway. So you didn't generate any new tax revenue from lunch unless these people were imported. So for all the locals that were hired there, which we're told this is for locals, this is going to help create jobs here, not for outsiders. This isn't going to help the outside world. It's going to help. So even if you stretch it to include like the tax that they get off of lunch for the people that work on these, you only get to 31 cents of tax revenue. So for best case scenario, every dollar that's invested loses $69 or 69 cents. That's just a coincidence. I didn't fudge that math to make it happen. They did it in Georgia. And in Georgia, they could only find that they generated, even with the stretched number, 19 cents for every dollar spent on their tax credits. And when you look at all the jobs that are created, how much tax revenue per job created? Auditors in the Georgia audit said each job worked out to $160,000 per taxpayer loss for each job created by the credit. So is this a good deal economically for the taxpayers of the states where this has already been tried? Absolutely not. I think the low-hanging fish is saying you're subsidizing people that hate you. Sure, you are. I mean, that should be a deal breaker to begin with. But on top of that, no, it's not even economically smart. I wouldn't even support this if it was pro-Jesus, pro-Austrian economics, pro-Constitution stuff. So the conservative and libertarian case against tax breaks kind of stands firm here. Because what you're still doing is you're allowing the government to pick winners and losers. And in this case, the Hollywood filmmakers, that whole industry, their constituents, they're going to win. You're going to lose. Make the case. Lower taxes, getting a tax break, incentivizes economic production. Not arguing against that. But now you're making a case on why you should lower everybody's taxes, not stifle all other industries except for your preferred ones. You're handing massive power to government wonks to hand out your money to their preferred industries, their groups, their businesses, their cronies, their voters. So there's way too many perverse incentives that have come from this. It hasn't worked anywhere. It's been tried. We shouldn't do it here. Period. Point blank. End of story. Sylvia and Garland, you're on WBAP. What do you think about subsidizing movie making in Texas?
I'm not usually for subsidizing, but on this one I am, and this is why.
Okay.
We had the movie making industry here in Texas. I got to be in a film with Meatloaf over in Irving. We have the infrastructure still there. We had a legislature that refused to do the tax incentives and the little bit of subsidization to keep them in Texas, and that's how they ended up in Georgia. So
good. Let Georgia pay for it.
We have so many dance schools, acting schools, high schools turn out artists, and they all leave the state because they can't work their craft. Like McConaughey said, he had to leave the state to work his craft. He was trained here. We lose talent. We lose the dollars of them buying their homes here. There is more than just that tiny little finite economic thing of direct return. It's like a pebble in the pond.
Okay.
And we need the film industry back in Texas again because we need some branch of that industry to be there for the independents that cannot get made in Hollywood because their viewpoint is different from Hollywood. We've got to get some of the U.S. film industry out of California and Texas. We should be at the forefront. And if it takes a subsidy to get them back in here, maybe there's some way to make it a limited subsidy, a limited time thing. I agree with you. We shouldn't. We got to get that industry back.
Why?
Because we're losing talent.
But you could listen. I'm sorry to interrupt you here. I'm just running out of time. You could say that about any industry. You could say that about people who make steel. You could say that about cattle ranchers. You could say that about talk show hosts. If we had a big giant subsidy for talk radio, you would see all the talk show hosts move here.
But you're not having to produce your show every day with no remuneration back financially after a 3 to 6 month period of time. I mean,
you're not making an economic argument. You just like movies, and so you want them here because you think it's cool. You're not making an economic argument.
Well, not because. Well, the economic thing on a lot of things that we subsidize doesn't work out. So there, I'm with the libertarians, except. There are some
except for this one because you think it's cool because you got to
money.
meet Meatloaf and you think movies are awesome, and we all do. We all enjoy movies. I'm not going to be a hypocrite and say I don't watch Netflix a lot or have never enjoyed a Wooderson line, but that's not an economic argument. You just like them is not enough.
Well, no, it would be a good thing for Texas to bring the.
It would be a loser for
A lot of
Texas.
independents have no
You're
place to
taking
go.
money out of the cash registers of small businesses and large businesses and private bank accounts in Texas to subsidize these movies. It's a zero-sum game when you talk about subsidies. For every dollar in Texas that's going to go to the movie industry is 2.5 billion fewer dollars are going to go to all the businesses that are already here not being subsidized. The corner store, the private teacher, the amusement parks, the restaurants, the accountants, everyone, your stores, everything is going to suffer in Texas to the tune of $2.5 billion that's being flushed down the toilet. This is only good for movie makers and people in the movie industry at the expense of everyone else.
I see more than just a dollar sign being beneficial for people.
That's what I'm saying. You just
many-
think it's cool. It's an economic loser. You just think movies are cool, and that's your argument. Well, we should take a big financial loss, and the taxpayers of Texas should just take it upside the head for $2.5 billion because you think movies and the movie industry is cool, and you don't want the movies to be made in Georgia. Let Georgia go subsidize those demons. 800-288-9227. Or am I being too harsh? Maybe I am. You can tell me. 800-288-9227. Thank you very much, Sylvia and Garland. I'm James Parker. It's News Talk 820 WBAP, now on FM at 93.3. Well, hey there. Welcome back to the James Show. News Talk 820 WBAP, now on FM at 93.3. Well, the markets seem to be going down, 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 and then a couple of bumps up, a couple of little rebounds. And yesterday they seemed to be rebounding until Trump gave the speech. And it's been kind of red since then. In fact, today was sort of brutal. NASDAQ is now down almost to bear territory. They're 18% off of their high from a couple months ago. Are we headed to a recession? Let's ask my next guest. Bill Dindy's back on. Hey, Bill Dindy, welcome back to the James Show. Glad to have you on, sir.
It's always a pleasure to be with you.
All right.
Unfortunately, I'll always seem to be with you when there's bad news in the stock market. And my gosh, the worst day we've had since 2020. A lot of people are very concerned now, saying, ouch, this was fun until just now. The market seems schizophrenic since November, not knowing if they should go up or down. But this down and down again, where we see 15 to 20% reductions from the all-time highs, that's got a lot of people concerned.
So what do you think is the likelihood of a recession in the next calendar year?
Well, we're seeing a lot of things that look recessionary. We're seeing things that are not long-term necessarily positive, but Trump has taken a big gamble here. And the gamble is that the tariffs will bring in revenues for the U.S. government. It will drive manufacturing back to the U.S., bring jobs back to the U.S. And he said early on that there's a little pain for a lot of gain, and we got to be able to sustain the pain. And when he said he was not going to look at the markets or doesn't look at the markets, he looks at the markets. First round, he looked at the markets a lot as indications of positive actions. So I think that it's no surprise to see when you wait to make an announcement till after the market closes that you anticipate the markets are not going to love the announcement. And when you make the announcement weeks ago that there's going to be some pain in this, we should expect there to be. I think that for a lot of folks, though, they thought that Trump was negotiating with Canada and Mexico, and once we tightened up the border and did some other things, that the tariffs would go away. Yet yesterday, he seemed to indicate 10% across the board and much higher reciprocal tariffs for those who had high barriers to entry for U.S. businesses, and that would be permanent. Yet, to what level are we permanent? I think that's part of the overall Trump negotiation strategy.
Well, let me see if I can pry some free financial advice out of you. Bill Dindy, let's say I call in and I'm your client, you're my financial advisor, and I say, hey, boss, should I be making any moves right now with my IRA or my 401k? What would you tell me?
Well, if you're my client, we've already had this discussion before the impact. I mean, it's one of those drills that you have before the emergency, before the changes. We talk about ahead of time. Are you looking to invest in because you believe the market's on sale? Are we long-term investors? And the ups and downs, we expect the market to have down periods because no one's ever drawn a straight up market line. So I've had people call and say, hey, is this a buying opportunity? It's less expensive. I'm like, yes, it is. We're 10 to 20% off where we were, but that's not a real sale. That's kind of like that 10% you get when you fill out the credit card application. It's nice, but you don't drive across town for it. That's an extra bonus. If you were already going to do it, it's nice to have it at a discount. The real sales are the 30, 40, and 50% off. And yes, we've had 50% off sales in the market. The 2008, 2000, 1987, we've had those periods where the things get such on sale. It's like, but you know what's crazy? Times like that, people are afraid to invest. So when you really do have the thing going on sale, a lot of folks will say, yeah, I thought I might want to do this. Let's just wait and see. And then they miss the opportunities.
Yeah, it also means you got to have cash on the sideline. And some of us just aren't that well disciplined, Bill Dindy, if we're going to be timing the market. I'm out of time. How can they find you online, Bill?
AlicornInvestmentManagement.com. ALICORN. It's a unicorn that flies.
There's Bill Dindy, D-E-N-D-Y. Thank you very much, sir. Coming up next, special guest of the day, Frank Caliendo. Frank Caliendo, the comedian, the impressionist. Yes. In fact, I'll tell you where he's going to be tonight if you can still try and get a ticket. Stick with the James Show. That's coming up next on News Talk 820 WBAP, now on FM at 93.3. Hey there, welcome back to the James Show, News Talk 820 WBAP, now on FM at 93.3. Yeah, let's go. I'm super excited about my next guest because this is a guy that there's no way he remembers meeting me. Frank Caliendo. Like 20 years ago, I was on a different radio show here, the Pugs and Kelly Show, and he came in and we knew him because he was doing the Madden stuff already, and he had already been on Mad TV, and we had seen his stand-up. And one of the first things he said, Frank Caliendo, yeah, you spell it C-alien-do. And I have always spelled your name right since then, because I don't know why I found that so funny. You've probably told that same joke, if it even counts as a joke, like 1,000 times. But Frank Caliendo, C-alien-do. Welcome to the James Show.
You know what? I do remember you, Pugs. If you're Pugs.
No, I'm James. I was the sidekick for those guys. I was the man on the street guy that go out with the microphone and say embarrassing
Then
things.
I don't remember you at all.
No. Well, the second time I met you, I was on a different show in New Orleans, and you were on our show on Radio Row, but you were on like 18 shows in a row that day, so there's no way you remember me there. You probably remember me if you saw me there. But you're a guy who just can't stop. And the first thing I want to ask you, Frank Caliendo, is what have you enjoyed most? Doing stand-up, doing Mad TV, doing the football stops for the Fox NFL Sunday? I mean, these are vastly different jobs. But which one do you think is more fun?
I would say the stand-up is, because there's a different set of rules at the NFL and Fox. And Mad TV too, and you never knew what the final product was going to be at either one of them. Things could get cut at a bunch of different levels. So stand up, I'm basically doing what I want to do the way I want to do it, and I'm my own self-editor at that point, and I think I do a pretty good job of that. So I do a very clean show and that type of stuff too. So I do try not to be a gunslinger with the words and that type of stuff. So I think I do a pretty good job of that, and that's why I think I enjoy it the most, doing stand up, because it's my own thing.
Well, I definitely see you as a comedian, a stand-up comedian who happens to do impressions and other acting gigs. But I think for a lot of America, they saw you doing their impressions first, and they're not familiar with you as a stand-up.
Well, I weave the impressions in a lot of like most of the stand-up, actually. So it's like, it's not doing, scenarios like an old school Rich Little kind of thing where I come on stage in character wearing a costume or something like that even. It's more of making an observation. So example, Al Pacino. When you talk about acting and how I've learned to act is you're curious. Well, Pacino is always curious to the point where he doesn't understand simple things. Like somebody could flip a light switch. He goes, "Wait a second! You flip a switch over there, and a light comes on over here. Whoa, that's sorcery!" And the fact that he yells for no reason. So then you do a type of fish out of water casting, cast him as a librarian just to see what he'd do. Everybody's like, shh, and like, where's the B section? Yeah, so that type of stuff, the juxtaposition, but for a reason, I like that type of stuff as opposed to just the what if Al Pacino was working at McDonald's. I think it would go something like this. So it's a little bit more thought to it, and that's how I've always approached it.
Yeah, see, I can't do the full Al Pacino. I can do Al Pacino being Scarface, which I think a lot of people can do. But the trick for anyone doing voices, and I've done voices in radio over the years, but it's all in the tongue placement. And I think you've even explained that in some of your videos, how when you move your tongue like up into the back and then move it to the front, you can turn from like Kermit the Frog into John C. Reilly or something to that effect.
Yeah, there can be some tongue placement. It's also tightening of the throat. So Kermit the Frog is up here. Hey, old Kermit the Frog here with more of a nasal thing. And if you bring in the back of the throat, you can tighten it up. And it's that Fozzie Bear, waka, waka, waka. So if you use those two types of things, if you go from Kermit the Frog and bring it down here, it becomes John C. Reilly. Did you touch my drum set? And then you add some air, becomes Mark Ruffalo. I see this as an absolute win. Add a little more depth to it, and it becomes Paul Giamatti. I believe this is one of the craziest things I've ever heard. Now, you tighten it up again a little bit, and it can become Seth Rogen. Oh, I had no idea I was even doing this. And then add the laugh, which is basically just Bert from Bert and Ernie slowed down. Bert's like, and then, so they're similar.
Right. I think like if you do Kermit the Frog with the country accent, you accidentally sound like Luke Bryan. There's a whole bunch of those. I don't want to try and do voices next to Frank Caliendo because I'll stink and embarrass myself. You're at the Addison Improv tonight. Now, I was wondering if you were going to come on the show because I assumed you were sold out. But here's what they did: they jacked up the prices, and you were all sold out except for one table. There's one table of 4 where you have.
I made them change that. I saw that there was a table of 8, and you had to buy all 8. I'm like, wait.
Someone bought that.
Guys, you got to split. No, I made them split it up. So
okay.
They got rid of that. I was like, let the people buy the individual tickets. I was like, that's kind of crazy. That's not as crazy as I'm going to be in another city later next week, and they were charging a suite for like $800 for like 10 people or something, like 8 people. You could have 8 to 10 people. I was like, I called my agent. I'm like, did we agree to this? What's an $800 set of tickets? That's crazy. So I had them move that too. But
hey, Frank, you might just want to accept that you're a really popular guy and you can command such high amounts because you have such a big and affluent audience.
They were still available. I don't think I was that popular.
Oh, okay.
But I am. I know your signal travels pretty far. There's, I think, 4 tickets left for tonight if they're not gone already.
I'm looking at it right now. There's 4. Yeah.
Yeah. So there's, other than that, I'm in Houston the rest of the weekend, Saturday and Sunday at the Houston Improv, which is owned by the same people, so I can do this. ImprovTX.com for either Dallas which is Addison, or the Houston Improv all this weekend. And even I will be back kind of in the area, but it's 3 hours away from Dallas proper. I'm going to be in Lawton, Oklahoma, at Apache Casino May 22nd as well. If you want to look at tickets for that, frankonstage.com. Even easier than see Alien Do for my last name. It's frankonstage.com. You can get all the tickets for Addison, Houston, or even Apache Casino out there in Oklahoma.
Real quick, Frank, you've managed to stay politically neutral while so many other comedians have just had to open their mouth and let the world know. Is that something you do on purpose? How important is that to you that you're not a political figure?
Well, I don't want to be. First of all, I always assume that I have the assumption that I might not be correct on an issue. So that's why I kind of walk the middle of it all the time. I don't seem to be. I always like to see how things play out. I don't like to jump to conclusions on anything. So, even with like the stock market today and that type of stuff, I look at that and go, okay, this looks really, really bad. Let it play out a little bit, and then I can get mad in 6 months from now if it's still that bad. So I look at stuff like that and see, but sometimes I think, change isn't always easy either way, whether it's to the left or right. And I like to watch it kind of, find its way. And I believe we can, if people work together, which sometimes means fighting it out and sometimes means just compromise. But that's how I am. I've always been that way, and I've never dug my heels into anything. But I like to see how in this world we live in, it seems to be that everybody jumps to a conclusion immediately on every single thing in the world. I'm like, well, you're going to change your mind 100 times in the next 100 days then. So we'll see. And I never wanted to be somebody who told you how to think. I'd rather listen to what you have to say, maybe have a friendly disagreement, and then let it play out. And we'll see. I'm wrong a lot. So I tend to think I'm going to be wrong. So I hope not, but it happens a lot of times. So that's why I kind of do it that way.
Well,
and I just thought, people hate being told what to think, I think.
Well, it's hard to be mad at a guy who takes a neutral stance like that. But you've seen so many guys, whether it's like a Bill Burr or a Ricky Gervais or a Russell Brand or even like a Jim Gaffigan, get swept up into politics. And I feel like you lose half your audience when you do that. So go see Frank Caliendo if you want to be one of the last 4 people to get a ticket. He's going to be at the Improv tonight at 7:30. Thank you very much, Frank.
Hey, appreciate you having me on. Thank you.
All right, that's fantastic. The guest of the day. I'm going to pull out this clip and I'll put it up online. I'll try and get it on YouTube and Facebook and the X account for WBAP tonight. How cool is that? The guy who does John Madden better than John Madden these days. Get it? Because John Madden's, passed away. See, this is why I'm not a comedian, so I'm a talk show host. I'm James Parker. It's News Talk 820 WBAP, now on FM at 93.3. Dan Bongino. No, it's not here. He's what is the deputy director of the FBI at this point? Hey, you're listening to James Parker on The James Show. News Talk 820 WBAP, now on FM at 93.3. And sometimes when we have these very important, almost heady headlines like what you're seeing with Liberation Day and the tariff situation, it's good to go back and learn some of the lessons from our most important professors from your childhood, some of your mentors, your teachers, your gurus. Among them, Ben Stein in Ferris Bueller's Day Off.
In 1930, the Republican-controlled House of Representatives, in an effort to alleviate the effects of the the Great Depression, passed the the tariff bill, the Hawley-Smoot Tariff Act, which raised or lowered, raised tariffs in an effort to collect more revenue for the federal government. Did it work? Anyone know the effects? It did not work, and the United States sank deeper into the Great Depression.
All right. How's that a setup for my next guest? Scott Bushke's back on The James Show. Welcome, sir. Your response to Ben Stein's tariff review from Ferris Bueller's Day Off.
Thank you. Love the clip. That was good.
So if you're using tariffs as a means to stimulate the economy or stave off a Great Depression, we have seen that that's not necessarily going to help very much. But can it help us get fairer trade deals with some of our other countries?
Yeah, I think that's the big question, right? There's a lot of chaos going on right now, but I think, looking at this as a long-term play of how can we get better trade deals, better negotiation, use this as a negotiation point to get something else that'll help Americans. And really, I think one of the biggest pushes that we see from my lens is that the small and medium-sized businesses, the manufacturing companies of America, some of that bedrock of our economy, they're going to have a more level playing field with this. And I don't think anybody thought it was going to go as far as it has. And there's obviously, you can see all the confusion and concern in the markets today. But it should really help the small manufacturer that, in all the small little towns and large cities as well, have a little bit better playing field and be a little bit more cost effective and competitive in the marketplace today.
Well, we can expect prices to go up if these things stay in effect. The question is it going to be enough that it could have a negative impact on the rest of the economy?
Correct. Yeah, and that's the big question to see with as far as these push things, what will that do? And only time will tell. I can tell you that in the M&A world right now,
mergers and acquisitions.
Yes, exactly. So the small, medium-sized businesses that are selling or companies looking to buy, there's still more buyers than there are sellers, and the activity is stronger in 25, the first quarter of 25, than it was in 24, fairly significantly. Now, with all of this coming out just this week, we'll see how that looks a quarter from now. But right now, it's still pretty aggressive marketplace out there. Well,
since you're an M&A guy, you'd be the good person to ask. Remember when everyone was doing corporate inversions about 10 years or so ago to get around some of the goofy international policies that we had? Could this sort of undo that or incentivize people to move their headquarters back here to get on the inside of the tariff wall?
Yeah, I think that's what they're hoping is that more, the trend has been more onshoring than offshoring. Obviously it was offshoring for a long time, and now, more people have said, hey, it's better to bring it back, better quality and timing and everything else. So I do think that's, one of the goals is not just to try to create revenue, which, we've seen how that's gone before, but it's also to try to bring more companies back to the United States for more jobs and really, help that manufacturing group continue to drive strong. But it definitely is causing some chaos right now and has people looking at, are they going to eat the cost? Are they going to pass on to the customers? Is it going to be the supplier, the manufacturer, the distributor? If they're in retail, where are these extra costs going to be absorbed and by who?
Well, I'm also thinking like, how Burger King did the corporate inversion where they joined Tom Hortons and then moved their headquarters to Canada. I'm looking for some of these to get undone because now the incentive could be, well, Tim Hortons would sure like to have their headquarters down here. And then we get to coin a new term. We could have like corporate reversions, Scott.
Right. There you go. You've got it. I mean, I think that is part of the goal is to make it financially viable to get companies back in the United States where we can get more revenue from those companies and again, just going back to that more level playing field for some of the companies here in the United States.
All right, Scott Bushke from Fun Chat. You can find him at cornerstone-business.com. Coming up next on the James Show, a proposal would make it easier to arrest and expel Texas students. Should it be easier to kick kids out of school? I say yes, and I'll explain myself next on the James Show. 800-288-9227. It's News Talk 820 WBAP, now on FM at 93.3. Hey, homeowners, I know you look outside and you see all the gray skies and you see the bad weather, and some of you have already been hit with it, and you're going to get some more this coming weekend. If you have one iota of doubt about your roof, you're insane to not take advantage of the free roof inspection from Blue Ribbon Roofing. James Parker here for BlueRibbonDFW.com. And the reason I say it's insane is because if you miss this, the cost of getting it repaired is going to explode exponentially. Now, if you let water get through undetected for any amount of time, you might be dealing with black mold. You have to redo some drywall. You might have to buy some new appliances. You might have to strip it down to the studs and redo all the insulation and all that. And it all could be avoided with a call right now. Go to BlueRibbonDFW.com. And if you don't trust me, trust the hundreds of 5-star Google reviews, and then call a family-owned company that's been in the area for 31 years. John and Tish, the husband and wife team, started this. They have their adult son, Trevor, in the mix now. They'll make sure you get taken care of at a decent price and even help you with the pain in the neck insurance paperwork. God, I hated that. So, BlueRibbonDFW.com, BlueRibbonDFW.com. Hey there, welcome to the James Show. News Talk 820 WBAP, now on FM at 93.3. You hear that sneaky little tone in my voice where you know I'm about to say something that people are going to disagree with? Oh, I love this part. So there's a new bill that's floating through Austin right now that would relax the ban on expelling students in pre-K through second grade. Little backstory here. About a decade ago, in 1 year, Texas public schools suspended more than 100,000 students in pre-K through second grade. And so when this was brought to the attention to the bedwetters in Austin, they were like, oh, that's wrong. We can't do that. We've got to leave all the worst kids in class to disrupt everyone else. And so they banned out-of-school suspension for kids pre-K through second grade. Except for, there's an exception to that. The most serious of offenses of all, if you brought a gun to class. Oh, yeah, that's right. Not guns. Guns are scary. Ah, look out. So since we've had this, repeated significant disruptions to the classroom have gone damn near unchecked. Now, when I say, like, suspended, they weren't completely expelled. We're just talking an out-of-school suspension temporarily up to being expelled. And if you have kids in public schools right now, I've got 4, so I know a little bit about this. One of the biggest problems that you may have observed, it's been my observation, I don't want to put words in your mouth, is that we kick way too few kids out of school. That has been my observation. Now, what does that end up looking like when you relax discipline on the worst students possible? Well, you're going to get worse results. You know, the discipline isn't just like punitive. It's not for fun. We don't punish kids or give them out of school suspension just to be mean to them. We do it because that's what's better for the other students. We're not even doing it because that's what's best for the student that got in trouble. He may learn his lesson from that, and that would be a good little rehabilitation moment for him. But if he doesn't, at least the other well-behaved kids got a break from this jerk for a while. And I say that because I got out of school suspension quite a few times when I was growing up. I got in school suspension so much that I had my own chair. My senior year, Coach Taylor gave me my own chair. It was a small school. I wasn't really in there all the time. It's just also I had relatives that worked there, so everyone knew me. And it's a town of 600 people, so of course I got my own chair. But you start thinking, like, what could the side effects of this be? Let's look at a couple of stories that we've had to deal with over the last couple of weeks, just the last week. I'm not saying there's a connection to that horrible story that happened in Frisco just yesterday. But if that guy had received more serious punishment, would it have reformed him? I don't know. That's really hard to say. But could it have been a cumulative effect if we were a little harsher on these people? A guy that bad, I have to imagine this isn't the first time he's had some negative behavioral act-outs. Would this guy have been suspended or kicked out of the public school program? Would he have even been allowed to the track meet in the first place? We'll never know. The kid last week that was beating the snot out of the other kid at the Bedford Junior High and stomped his head until he was unconscious. Were we better off that kid was in school, that he didn't get out of school suspension growing up, that we relaxed the punishment for bad kids? Because you see the obvious parallel when we defunded the police and we relaxed the prosecutions on, say, like shoplifting in California. And when we tried to be deferential and thoughtful and empathetic to the criminals around us, did crime get better or worse? Well, the same thing's going to happen in school. The real problem here, though, isn't that these people are going to be fixed by harsher punishments. They're going to be removed by harsher punishments. What we're doing here is treating the symptom and not the disease. And I believe the real disease, people like to point at the racial angle. In both the Bedford beating last week and the Frisco stabbing this week, and you go in the comment section, and it breaks your heart to see people bring up race, because the problem isn't race. There's nothing inherently good or bad about people based on the color of their skin, period, point blank, end of story. Some people might try and put a cultural angle on it, but let's be more specific. The problem we're having with the behavioral issues in schools, especially public schools, can almost exclusively be boiled down to the absence of the father in the household. The poor job we've done in family formation across all races and socioeconomic classes. The data is absolutely crystal clear. The number one thing, the number one predictor of a kid ending up in prison in adulthood is whether or not he has a father in the home. Not the color of his skin, not whether it's not his parents are rich or poor, or what socioeconomic background he came from, or whether or not he finished college. It's whether or not he had a dad in the house. He was born in wedlock and raised with his biological parents. 30 times more likely to end up in prison. What do you think about that? 9 times more likely to drop out of high school. There's all kinds of statistics to this. The number one predictor of whether or not a kid will be abused, whether it's sexually abused, physically abused, verbally abused, harassed, whatever, tormented. The number one predictor of that is whether or not they're exposed to a step parent at some point in their childhood, male or female. So let's not get caught up in some weird cultural battle. Let's not try and make this a race thing. Let's not try and make this a victim thing. Let's not try and make this a socioeconomic thing. Well, these poor people, they just don't have all the same opportunity stuff. No, there's nothing you can do to replace the dad in the home. There's nothing that's been tried thus far, whatever program it is, whatever food stamps it is, or free lunch program it is, or housing allowance, or the public transportation. These are all jobs that are supposed to be handled first and foremost by your dad. And the government has proven to be an inadequate substitute. And until we address that, then we're just putting Band-Aids on wounds. Whether or not we suspend them forever or expel them from the public school system or not, you're still dealing with the fallout that came from the dissolution of the nuclear family. And so what's the solution? Can we start advocating that? Can we start saying more positive things? Can we have the Chapel Roans of the world say positive things about having kids? Can we just have one of the songs on a hip hop station say something good about having kids and getting married? Is there a rap song about a dad? And I don't mean stunting like my daddy, because Birdman is not Lil Wayne's dad. But you turn on country music and you have tons of them. You have All American Girl. You have There Goes My Life. Let me tell you the secret about a father's love. Even today, like in modern country music, they talk about fall in love, getting married, having kids, raising your baby. Is there one of those songs? Go turn it to a rap station right now. Listen for 24 hours. See if there's one positive song about fatherhood in their music. Rock music? Looking at you too. Again, this is not a race thing. This is not a socioeconomic thing. This is a cultural thing. And it's not race specific. It's dad specific. And until we learn that lesson, we're going to continue to have a bunch of poor acting kids in public schools. And we're just going to have to figure out a way to deal with it or kick them out. 800-288-9227. 800-288-9227. I'm James Parker. It's News Talk 820 WBAP, now on FM at 93.3. Hey there, welcome to the James Show, News Talk 820 WBAP, now on FM at 93.3. Well, the stock market didn't seem to like the tariff situation today, but the people that are sympathetic to tariffs are saying, listen, this is just going to be a little speed bump, totally expected, and this will all work itself out pretty soon. Now, if not, it's hard to argue that this won't grind some economic activity to a halt, but I imagine the truth is going to be somewhere in the middle. This isn't going to be immediately resolved, and this isn't going to go on forever. But how long is the pain going to last, and how deep will it hurt? Let's ask my next guest, Victoria Churchill. How about these impossible questions? You know, look in your crystal ball and predict the future for me, Victoria. No big deal. Are you with me?
Well, so great to be back on with you today. You know, I think there's a couple different things that we have to consider here. You know, personally, I am not the biggest fan of tariffs. I'm more of a free market thinker myself, but, you know, it will be interesting to see what happens. I think part of the president's plan with this is that he wants to bring a lot more manufacturing stateside. And I think we're even seeing that already with a couple of companies announcing that they want to bring back their production stateside. Now, obviously, with tariffs, there's, of course, tariffs not only on the finished product, but also on raw materials. So that could also impact, you know, costs here in the U.S. So I think there's definitely a lot of factors that we have to consider here.
Well, I also like the people accept that there's going to be a little bit of a lag time. Some people are just concerned about how long it will be. I'm not that concerned with how long it will be. Like, how long will it take for us to make the new factories here? Well, it's not an excuse to not do it. It's a good question, and I don't know what the answer is to that, but I don't think that's a legit criticism.
Yeah, and, you know, like I said, I think there's definitely some organizations that have already announced intent. I believe, you know, auto manufacturers and other people like that are rushing or not necessarily rushing, but they've kind of announced plans to bring things back stateside, maybe from countries like Mexico, because they don't want to face those import tariffs on goods now. And then, of course, you know, we also have things like steel and lumber that would also be affected by this. You know, some projections do think that, you know, obviously, like I said, with the auto manufacturing, the steel component of it could be a factor. Also, new home prices, I know, is another thing that people are looking at. But, you know, again, you know, maybe if the home costs what it does, but the interest rates go down, like the actual consumer cost may be unaffected. So, like I said, you know, there's a lot of factors at play here, and we'll see which of them come to fruition and which of them don't.
So, Victoria Churchill, you did a lot of great reporting for us following around the election last year. How do you think this is going to play out politically?
Well, you know, again, the president promised to bring a lot of manufacturing back stateside, and so if this is a way that his you know, if that's the way to make that come stateside, then that's going to be a win for him politically, particularly in swing states. You know, you've got places like Michigan, you've got places like Wisconsin. You know, I believe there's actually an auto manufacturer guy. His name totally escapes me, so I do apologize on that. But, you know, the president actually brought him to the White House the other day. This is somebody that was a...
Oh, yeah. No, that was Kid Rock. See? Just joke.
Well, you know, he is producing some things. I don't necessarily know if he's doing that factory labor unless he writes a songwriting factory. But hey, you know, again, if that brings more things back stateside, might as well. But there is actually somebody again whose name does escape me. That this is actually somebody that he had brought this individual up during several of his rallies in Michigan, and you know this individual, like I said, works in the auto industry, and he was at the White House the other day saying that he believes that this is a win for places like Michigan that have seen, you know, their jobs go overseas. So, you know, again, also, of course, with U.S. manufacturing potentially being brought back, you know, there are things like increased labor costs. So again, you know, there are going to be additional factors that come into the cost of goods and services, but, you know, at the end of the day, we will see what people are willing to take. And again, there's actually already been some polling. You know, you talk about politically, obviously we talk about polling a lot in the political world. There's some polling that some Americans are willing to kind of, you know, take this and, you know, kind of, I guess, play their part by paying a little bit more, by knowing that as fellow Americans, they're going to be making these goods if these tariffs do play out in bringing more manufacturing back to the U.S.
Thank you very much, Victoria Churchill. How do we find you online?
Yeah, best way to keep on track of what I'm doing is I've got, my X account. It's going to be snits_Churchy, SNITS_CHURCHY. And then as well, I've got a Substack, Freedom Shots. Feel free to subscribe there to hear the latest from me.
There she is, Victoria Churchill. Appreciate your time again. That's going to about do it for the James Show. Remember, we have WeatherCon 2025 brought to you by Blue Ribbon Roofing coming up April 26th. More details on that, go to WBAP.com. But I'd love to see you out there Saturday at the Frontiers of Flight Museum, 9:30 until 1:30 p.m., April 26th. So come on out, say hi. And stick around. Mark Levin's coming up next. I'm James Parker. It's News Talk 820 WBAP, now on FM at 93.3.